For our first question, it is going to be directed towards candidate Johnson. Can you explain to us what a libertarian is, what you believe in, and why the people in this country should vote for you, a third-party candidate, instead of Clinton or Trump?
Okay, the Libertarian Party, they think that government should stay out of personal business, that it should be more local decisions instead of government, and you should vote for a third-party candidate because, first off, you wouldn't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Johnson hasn't really had much discussed about him. He hasn't been involved in scandals. And also, voting for a third-party candidate may help in the two-party system because 65% of Americans don't feel like either party represents them. They say they're only for this party because they are scared of what the other party has to do or say. So Johnson is the only choice.
For our second question, it is going to be directed towards candidate Clinton. Why do you think raising minimum wage to $12 or $15 per hour will help our economy?
It will help the economy by helping families that normally don't have a living wage have a living wage. That way they can provide for their children because of circumstance they may not be able to provide for their children, but increasing the minimum wage will allow them to be able to provide for their children because it isn't their children's fault that their parents may not be able to get a sustainable job with a living wage.
We need to realize that although it is very important that we take care of our families and that they're able to provide for their children, that families and a household with children in it is not all that America is made up of. Raising minimum wage is only going to benefit that kind of a household. When you raise the minimum wage, it's going to cost businesses and companies more money because they're paying their employers more. So what are they going to do to replace the money that they have to pay their employers? They're going to raise their prices. So really, what good is raising the minimum wage going to do when you're earning more money to pay for what you need, but what you're paying for is going to get more expensive? So are you really gaining anything?
The important thing to realize in this is raising the minimum wage is it's not going to benefit anybody in the long run. It's not like those people are going to go out and get a job immediately if they think the minimum wage is going to be raised. We need to keep the money in the hands of upper class so that they can provide for lower class. Therefore, more people will have jobs anyways, and making minimum wage won't be a problem. They're still going to make just enough money to provide for themselves. They may not be able to get steak, but they're still making money.
You can't forget to provide for the middle and lower class because that is majority of America. Even though it may have some effects here and there, you can't forget to care about the majority of America because the majority of America is families, actually. And so that is a very important thing to care for. I mean, we'll make it stronger together if we actually have a living wage.
Thank you all. For our next question, this is going to be directed towards Mr. Trump. Although we have historical evidence that trickle-down economics does not work, why do you think it can now? Could you explain this, please?
Trickle-down economics is the only reasonable tax plan to even consider. First off, if we make everybody pay equal taxes, those people that are at the top creating jobs for lower class are no longer going to be able to create jobs because they don't have enough money to anymore. If we don't make them pay as much taxes, they'll still be paying taxes, it's okay. But if we don't make them pay as much taxes, they are much more able to provide jobs for lower class, keeping the economy in America instead of not at all.
All right.
Governor Johnson does not believe that people should be punished for not making enough money or making too much money. His plan would be to replace all of the income and payroll taxes with a single consumption tax that determines your tax burden by how much you spend, not how much you earn.
Is that really fair to majority of Americans? Because not all families and people can handle that, because just because a higher class person pays a lesser percent because of loopholes, is that really fair to the lower class? No. Clinton believes that you should increase the taxing on the upper class and slightly alleviate it on the lower class, because majority of America is in the lower percents. So it's only fair to truly do it that way.
Alleviating taxes for the lower class is not going to help anybody. Like, it's going to, of course, okay, it's going to help the lower class, but they don't need that. The upper class people worked very hard to get to where they are, and they shouldn't have to pay more just because they're at the top. They're the ones providing those jobs for the lower class so that they have money.
If we go with Governor Johnson's plans for taxes, the people that spend the most money in the economy are the rich. So his plan would, in a way, cause the rich to pay more money. And it would take away, of course, all income tax and payroll tax, so that the lower and middle class would... I forgot what I was saying. The lower middle class would benefit, because their money wouldn't be, like 30% of their money around there wouldn't be taken away each month, and they would only be taxed on what they could afford. So more money in their pockets.
Judging by the impoverishment of our minorities, I don't think that the big people running our country and the economy are really taking care of anybody but themselves.
It isn't our fault that the lower middle class don't know how to spend their money.
Anybody? One more.
It's not our fault that you got a small loan of $1 million.
Okay, on to our next question. This question is for Johnson. You have been put on record saying you would like to decriminalize drugs. Could you explain your reasoning for this?
Okay, Governor Johnson, yes, he wants to decriminalize drugs, but the difference is he doesn't want to legalize the use of other recreational drugs like heroin and meth. When he decriminalizes drugs, he wants to treat it as more as a health issue instead of a criminal issue, because when people are injecting drugs into their self, it does not harm anyone around them. It only harms themselves, unless they start to drive or something like that. And when you start arresting people for nonviolent crimes, that costs a lot of money to keep people in jails and prisons. And then when they get out, the society looks at them like they're lowlifes, and then people recycle into that cycle. They keep doing that. So decriminalizing actually will help, because instead of putting money for putting people into jails, they can put it for rehabs and stuff like that.
Hillary Clinton believes that we don't have enough research yet to say that we can legalize recreational use of marijuana, and that we can have medical marijuana now, but we need to wait and see from the states who have already legalized it if that's the way we should federally divert.
The next set of questions is for all candidates to answer. For the first question, Trump, can you please respond? What is your answer to terrorism concerns? How do you defeat ISIS and Al-Qaeda?
Our approach must be shared by both parties in America, by our allies overseas, and by our friends in the Middle East. And our goal must be to halt the spread of radical Islam. All of our action should be oriented around this goal, and any country which shares this goal will be our ally. We can't always choose our friends, but we can be sure we know who our enemy is. He plans to work with Jordan, Egypt, and Russia, who all have big problems with ISIS. His administration will aggressively pursue joint and equal coalition military operations to crush and destroy ISIS. Will no longer to attempt nation building or spreading democracy in the Middle East, which was a huge problem. What we have and think of this, the decisions made by the Obama-Clinton group have been absolutely disastrous, and that ends here and now.
And then I'll go.
I think when dealing with ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other foreign affairs, we need to use brains and not bombs. The whole reason that Syria is in such a mess right now is because we went over there and we made it our business to go over and redo their government, and it doesn't make much sense to Gary Johnson that we think that staying involved in their business is going to help when we're the reason that there's disaster over there.
Secretary Clinton believes that we should continue what we're doing in the Middle East and keep working with our allies in NATO and the United Nations to defeat ISIS.
Secretary Clinton is known to stick with the status quo, and everything she does or wants to do would not be right, because like she said, we need brains, not bombs. Clinton wants to send troops. She wants more boots on the ground. Clinton has no idea about military control or anything like that. Benghazi.
Well, perhaps maintaining the status quo is a good thing because the status quo is already proven or successful, so perhaps that's why maintaining the status quo would work.
The status quo, that's how ISIS, sending more troops over and stuff like that. You want more troops and boots on the ground, but we're the ones who helped start ISIS. We were over there, we created stuff. We should not be sending people all around the world when we have stuff at home that we need to worry about first. So the status quo is not always right.
Gary Johnson believes we have too much going on within our borders to be worrying about what's going on in other nations. If we can't fix ourselves here at home, then why do we expect ourselves to be able to fix everyone else?
As he said, and as Secretary Clinton believes, we have to work with our allies and root out ISIS. And as it is going, we are successful. It just takes time to fight a thing such as this. So the status quo, as you repeatedly loved referring to Clinton by using, is okay. It is working. It just takes time.
Stop it. Okay, well, we got Osama bin Laden, didn't we?
Also killed like a lot of people in Benghazi.
We did, but we got Osama.
Anything else?
For our next question, will Clinton please respond? What is your stance on Gun Control America? How do you interpret the Second Amendment?
More than 33,000 Americans are killed by guns each year. It's time to act. As Secretary Clinton says, I'll take the gun lobby and fight for common sense reforms to keep guns away from terrorists, domestic abusers, and other violent criminals, including comprehensive background checks that allow guns to not fall into the wrong hands.
On behalf of Gary Johnson, I want to make an analogy that everyone here can understand. When one person shows up to school and does something wrong, say for instance, one person comes to school wearing something that's inappropriate, what does the school decide to do? They make a rule saying that you can't do that. Just because it looks inappropriate on one person, then everybody can't wear it. So what are you doing? You're only punishing the people who actually abide by the rules. Same for gun control. Outlawing guns is only going to hurt law-abiding citizens. How many gun-related accidents, how many people are killed by guns where guns are legal? The majority of gun-related accidents happen in gun-free zones. A good person with a gun can stop a bad person with a gun.
I just want to go back to the statistic that we used for Ms. Clinton. I heard you say 33,000. That sounds quite familiar.
I like that. Okay. Okay. Kind of what she was saying. Whenever you hear about a mass shooting, it's awful and it's terrible, but the news is only going to focus on the times when the gun did get into the wrong hands and unfortunately shoot and kill a lot of people. We never hear about the stories with the good guys who stop bad guys with guns because it does not make the news, because it will not give us ratings. So there is more good given to people with guns, good people given guns, than is credited by the media, because it won't give them the ratings and the money that they want.
Same media that wants you on TV, right?
So what Johnson is suggesting is basically be reactive to things instead of proactive and prevent them from happening. So instead of stopping school shootings, what Johnson's basically saying is he wants to handle them afterwards. So while Clinton instead wants to keep those guns out of dangerous hands, which is obviously a much more important point, because it's better to stop it from happening than to handle the after effects.
I think gun control needs to be much less of the government's business. I think that the Second Amendment is fair. It gives us the rights that we need. That's the whole reason we have a Bill of Rights, is to protect our rights. So what does that say about our government when we start taking those rights away? And I don't think that we need to keep guns in the hand of criminals, but a criminal is a criminal. Whether or not it's against the law, they're going to get a hold of a gun. That's what makes them a criminal. If there is a will, there is a way, and if they want the gun, they will get it. Taking guns away from everyone else is leaving them defenseless.
Going back to what Johnson said, Trump fully supports protecting the Second Amendment, and that there shouldn't be guns taken away from people that know how to use guns. Taking guns away from the people who are responsible with guns only puts them in more danger. If there's limits on guns, especially everywhere, it's already bad enough having no gun zones, because that's just a target for people who want to use their guns, because they know nobody else is going to have a gun to protect themselves with. Making a conceal and carry valid across all states is also something that Trump believes in doing. He thinks that you should always be able to protect yourself, and it's ridiculous to take away people's right to protect themselves.
Background checks won't be a problem for people who know how to use guns the right way. And it's important that we do as much as we possibly can to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have guns.
When we're talking about these background checks and these mental evaluations, in some cases, part of what makes people
part of what drives people to do these horrible shootings, to do school shootings, to shoot up the clubs and everything, part of what drove them to do that was their ability to hide it. If they can hide it from everyone else, if they can hide their plans, then what makes you think that they wouldn't be able to hide it during a mental evaluation?
So another thing Johnson is saying is it's better to just have no control when you could have shootings, say out of 10 shootings, you could have, well, out of 10 chances to have shootings, it'd be better to have 8 when you could at least try to stop them and at least narrow it down to 7. Or even then, that saves lives. So a little gun control, a background check, a mental evaluation will help save people's lives. That is the whole point of controlling guns.
Okay, back to background checks. Say, for instance, if I have a son or a family member and they want to go hunting that night, okay? Hunting season only lasts for a minimum period of time. And my little boy's gun breaks. And I know Trump doesn't have a little boy, but for instance, his gun breaks. I want to go get a new gun so that my son can go get his first deer for this hunting season. If I have to wait weeks to get a background check done just so I can go get a gun, my poor little boy is going to miss his only chance to get a deer for that period of time.
I do not think, Gary Johnson and myself do not think that there should be no control on guns. They don't think it should be the government's control. The people should be able to control. Like I said, a good person with a gun can stop a bad person with a gun. It should be left up to the states.
Johnson, will you please respond to the next question? With the rising cost of college education, many graduates are graduating with debts that they cannot pay off. Do you have a plan to address this issue, and can you explain how this nation can fix the problem?
I think I think education should all be done locally. I oppose the Department of Education and Common Core. It really isn't doing anything for our education system. Locally is where we can kind of see what our education needs. On such a large scale nationally, we can't really meet the needs of our students. So I think the more local government is, or the more local education is, will sort of fix everything because we know what students need locally more than we do across the nation.
Hillary Clinton's plan is to raise taxes on the 1% to make college more affordable for everyone. She has been put on record as saying that she wants free college for everyone, which isn't true. She has said that free college is not the solution for everyone. However, it is the solution for those in the middle to lower class.
I have seen that it's been proven that even if you tax the 1%, 100%, that would still not cover all the costs of public tuition at every college across the nation.
For the next question, this question is directed towards Trump. Why do you think building a wall will solve all the nation's problems?
Donald Trump believes we have no border, and that infuriates him. He believes that Mexico is sending all kinds of crime over here, drugs, rapists, and there's 351 undocumented residents sitting in our prisons that are costing us $1.1 billion annually. Why do we need that? Why should our taxpayers pay for Mexico's criminals? So Mexico is killing us at borders and on jobs. They're taking the jobs that our Americans could have, which, given they don't want those jobs, but they could have them. And by putting up the wall, we'll save money as a nation because we're keeping out the bad dudes. We're not going to spend the tax money on keeping them in prison, and we're not going to give them the entitlements that we do now.
So you do realize the wall. People will build longer ladders, deeper holes, or anything to still get into the country. Your campaign is based on building a wall. How are you going to pay for that? Mexico's president already said he wouldn't pay for that. How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to make it work? And what are you going to do when people are here? Are you going to deport them, or are you going to make? What's your plan for that? I've only heard building a wall. That's not going to work. That can't be your only plan.
Trump's plan is to use illegal immigrant labor to build this wall, so because Mexico already said he wasn't going to pay for it.
But Trump's idea to build a wall is obviously probably not going to succeed, but Hillary Clinton's idea is much more successful because she wants to make it easier for immigrants to become citizens. That way they have to pay the taxes that we do, and they actually work and act as an American. And it's too hard right now for them to become Americans. That's why Trump, in his own way, thinks building a wall will help.
The reason so many immigrants come here illegally is because it is very expensive and a very strenuous process to come to America as an as a legal immigrant. What we need to do is to reform the immigration system to make it a little bit easier for immigrants to come over here so that they can then contribute and pay taxes and be an active member of American society.
Okay, back to what you had said about Mexico's president saying they're not going to pay for the wall. Other politicians may not be able to convince him to do that, but I'm Donald Trump. It's going to happen. And holy crap. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's a wall. It's a wall, but can be doors in this wall. You can walk through that wall, and it should be hard to become an American citizen. Isn't that the standard we should hold ourselves up to, and that people who come into our country should hold themselves to as well?
Crap, what did she just say? Crap, what did she just say? She just talked about opening doors in the wall just to be part of being American.
Hey, go here.
Okay. It's also sad that, yes, it's hard to get in, but America is based on diversity. We should make it easier for people to get into this country so they don't have to come here illegally. When things are hard, people obviously aren't going to go through the work. And also it's sad that a lot of legal immigrants know more about America's government because of all the tests they have to take than the actual Americans here in America.
What both of my other candidates are saying about making it easier for these immigrants to become citizens is not what we need at all. If these people become citizens, even not being citizens, they're already taking our jobs. But if they were, it would become even easier for them to take more jobs from us, and that's not what we need. We need more Americans to have the opportunity to get into the workplace.
Back to what you said, do you realize how many Americans are lazy and draw checks from the government because they don't want to work, or they lie and say they're hurt and can't work? Legal immigrants do jobs that Americans don't want to work, hard labor and everything else.
Okay, right there. You said some. So some of our immigrants are going to come in here and do the jobs that we need them to do. Some are going to do just what some of the Americans do and sit at home and draw their check. You can't, just because they're an immigrant doesn't mean you can hold them to a whole different standard than you do our Americans. And it is sad that they know more than a legal resident of the United States that is born here. But shouldn't they? I mean, they're coming. We've lived here all our lives. We know what happens around here. They're coming in here, and we don't know anything about them. We don't know who they are, what they do, anything. So I mean, they should have to prove themselves to us before we let them in.
I think Mr. Trump's idea is that he wants opportunity for Americans, which is true. I think we all want that. But the point is we want it easier for them to be Americans, because many of them embody the American virtues and the American dream. They want to come here and live a life. But the problem is they can't, because it's way too hard to become a citizen. The tests are difficult that most citizens couldn't even answer, and the background checks and everything takes such a long time, and it requires so much money. That's why many come here illegally. We need to make it easier for them to actually become citizens.
Part of the reason that many illegal immigrants don't bother with becoming legal is because the process is so hard and strenuous on them that if it were just slightly easier for them to get in, then they would happily and willingly go through the process.
Bottom line, letting immigrants in, legal or not, only invites in more terrorism.
There are domestic terrorists here, so how is inviting immigrants into our country more terrorism when we have domestic terrorism already here at hand?
You just called everyone who wants to come here terrorists, and like you said that immigrants that come here just invite more terrorism. Okay, well I'm just making sure. I think that speaks for itself.
If we're so worried about terrorists and so worried about what they're going to do to us over here, then why are you all focusing on sending our troops overseas and getting them involved in things over there where the terrorists actually are?
Anybody?
I feel like it's worthwhile pointing out that Donald Trump's plan clearly states that he feels it's better to put up a wall and ignore terrorism and ignore terrorists and other people coming into the country, when you should really face the issue head on instead of hiding from it.
I'm assuming some of Trump's paranoia about this also. I'm assuming some of Trump's paranoia about this also comes from Syrian refugees who happen to be Muslim, and it just so happens that Trump happens to not like Muslims or other minorities, which is one of the main reasons for his ideas. But the actual tests and background checks that refugees and things like that have to come and go through are extremely difficult to pass, and even if there's a chance of terrorists sneaking in, which there is very slim chances of, is possible, yes. But there are already terrorists here to begin with, as they said, domestic terrorists. We stop everyone we can as best as we can, and it has decreased numbers immensely.
Hillary has daddy issues.
Let's go.
While we're on the subject of domestic terrorists, that brings up the point of why don't we work on America first? Quit worrying about the immigrants coming in and focus on taking care of America. Like, make it great again.
Building this wall and going overseas, like you guys are saying, is wrong, is the best choice for America. We are getting rid of these terrorists at their roots. We aren't letting them even have the chance to get over here in the first place, and that's what we need. Whether you guys realize it or not, I know what's best for America.
Clinton, the next question is for you. You say you are for the little guy and support lower and middle classes, but your regulatory ideas on corporations and the environment threatens to end the coal industry in Kentucky and put thousands more in the unemployment line. What will you do for these people?
Well, first off, I'd like to start this by saying that climate change is a real issue, and in our capitalist society, we can't own the sun. So, therefore, we think that we can't profit off of it, but renewable energy sources will pay for themselves in the long run. We should stop drilling for oil in the Antarctic, and we need to stop the tax giveaways to big oil and gas companies. We need to have stronger regulations on fracking, and we can't afford a president who ignores science.
Global warming and such environmental issues, they are a real thing, and they are something that we need to consider. Everything we're doing here, worried about getting a new president and such, what good is that if we didn't actually have an earth to do it on? Fracking should be monitored more strongly, and we should worry more about preserving our resources.
I just think it's kind of funny how Clinton's campaign is based on making more jobs for the middle class, but we're letting in the immigrants who take our jobs and also taking away the thousands of the coal industry. I just don't understand how that goes hand in hand with your campaign.
The jobs that would be lost from the destruction of the coal industry could be replaced by jobs created by renewable energy and the economics and the money that that would bring in.
But that would take a long time, of course. But I mean, that is an option to do the renewable energy sources.
First off, we've already tried that. It doesn't work. Second off, there can only be so many jobs made from the sun. It doesn't take people to get energy from the sun as much as it takes to get coal. It's still going to take away multiple jobs from lower class people, which is apparently who you're trying to help.
Investing in solar energy in the long run would overall lower the cost of electricity, and we would be helping the middle class if we lowered their bills, wouldn't we?
Okay. In the long run, yes, it would be an adjustment to go from coal to renewable energy resources. However, if we keep uncontrollably polluting our planet, then we're not going to have a planet left to even have jobs on. We have to be concerned about our water pollution and our air pollution for the health of ourselves and for the health of future generations.
By implementing your whole renewable energy resource plan here, that's costing us more and more money and more time when the coal's already there and it's already happening. So why not just continue what we've started before we start reverting to other things that could save us in the end?
Because it'll eventually all go out. And I don't know of an exact time of that, but in the next, I'd say 50 to 60 years, it'll all go out.
Mr. Trump, as a businessman, should know that you sometimes have to invest up front to make things pay out in the end. And this is an investment. It will lose jobs for a short period, but the jobs are placed, and how much it will help the economy and the earth outweighs just sticking with coal.
Based on what Mr. Trump thinks, and also research, there is enough oil for at least 284 years at least, and then for natural gas there's at least like 158 or something years. So we'll be fine if we have to wait.
So let's say we do have enough oil for 200 more years. We do have enough resources for 200 more years. Obviously, what you're saying is that implementing more restrictions and such will take time, and it will take money, and it will cut jobs. But it has to be done at some point. Think about our posterity. Think about in 200 years, what are they going to do when they're out of time? We have the time now. We have 200 years to get our acts together, and that's what we need to start doing, because the longer we wait, the more problem it is going to be for the future.
We don't need to worry about this right now. We have 200 years. What we really need to focus on is the fact that China is taking all of our jobs.
You say that we don't need to worry about it now, but if we don't have to worry about it now, then explain to me why we're seeing changes in our environment every day.
Be sure and leave a note to your future generations and your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren when they're wondering why they don't have any safe water to drink and don't have any gas to put in their cars, that it wasn't important enough at the time to take care of.
They will be smart enough to figure it out by that time. It's not our problem.
For our last question today, this is one for everyone, so will Clinton please respond first. If you are elected president, what role do you believe the United States should have in world affairs as a member of NATO and as a member of the UN?
We should keep doing what we're doing in the United Nations and NATO and keep being the one who leads everything and just keep the world in check like that.
If Johnson were elected president, of course, he's focused more on small government and keeping America's concerns at home. However, he does believe that we should have an equal part in NATO and the UN and not be the major source of money, because, for example, in the UN, roughly 80% of their funding comes from us because we are the major world power, and he believes that we should stay in those alliances. However, we should have an equal part and not be the sole resource for money and materials.
Trump, obviously, believes that, like I said earlier, he wants to start with America, make us great again, and then when it comes time, we need to reassess our commitments to our NATO countries and focus then. But for now, we're going to start here in America, and we're going to make us great again.
If America isn't the one to take the charge, who will? America has to be the leader, and they have to stick with their allies to basically take the charge, because Russia's Russia. They won't. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
How are you going to make it great again? Mr. Trump, how exactly, give me specific examples on how you're going to make America great again.
First off, we are going to keep jobs in America, creating. What? do we have?
Cross country gym. Answer. Go ahead and answer, then we'll go.
Basically, everything I'm going to do is going to make America great again. End of story.
Thank you all.